I was working 45, 50, 60 hours a week, 5 days a week, like everybody else. But it just had become unsustainable moving forward. And that's why I figured we're in the position now with the 5 properties, amongst other investments as well, that I no longer needed to be in that position. I miss family time. I miss going, holidays. I sacrifice just hours and hours for the business.
G'day everyone, this is Iynka here. Welcome to Investor Journeys, where we chat with everyday Aussies and seasoned investors about their property journeys, the wins, the stuff-ups and everything in between. Whether they've got one property or a whole portfolio, we dive into how they did it, what they've learned and what their journey's been like so far. No fluff, just real stories from real people. So let's get stuck in. G'day everyone, welcome to the IJ podcast, and we've taken a little bit of a break over the last few weeks. We've been transitioning personally into a number of activities and through the business and personally, and look, we're back on track, so to speak, and I've actually got a guest that we've had previously who came on the podcast, episode 11, if you want to go check out his journey. But we've got Shaun, who's come on the pod. Again, he's transitioned into the next stage of his journey without giving too much away. So really, we want to uncap that and see how he's been able to do it, really, and then run through sort of what's in the next stages of his life. So Shaun, welcome back, mate. Thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Shaun, do you want to just give the viewers a little bit of a recap on your journey, through your initial stages and what we spoke about in episode 11? Obviously, for those who haven't heard the full details, they can go to it. But yeah, tell the viewers a little bit about yourself again, mate, and your property investment journey.
Yeah, I guess so. I'll start with our property journey. I own 5 properties together with my partner Vanessa and my daughter Bella and son Isaac. Bella did ask me to mention her on the podcast. So
Hey, Bella.
when I told her I was coming on, she said, "Can you make sure you talk about me?" So I figured I better start that off. But yeah, look, we built a portfolio of 5 properties over the last 15 years. And basically, I'm just a normal person who just transitioned out of a normal everyday job in retail. And yeah, we spent all those years building up the properties to a point where I've now, I said, transitioned into doing basically what I want with my time.
Yeah. Well, you say that you've collected 5 properties like it's a very casual thing. I'm from the stats from the ATO, the number of people who got 5 properties or more, I believe you can fit into a stadium in like a normal stadium. Out of all the investors in Australia, I think there's over 2 million of them. So it's certainly no small feat for what you've achieved. But it is also about the execution and the performance of those properties. So do you want to give a little bit of a rundown on those properties, where they are and the rough sort of portfolio that you've got at the moment?
Yeah, no worries. And you're right. Yeah, I do say it casually, and I do also kick myself that I own 5 properties. Never growing up did I ever think that I would have that sort of level of wealth, you could say. It's same as Vanessa. Like we just, we never expected it. But we did.
Hard work and grit. There probably wasn't any hand-me-downs as well.
No, there was no hand-me-downs, a lot of hard work. We could probably go into work a little bit later as to how hard it actually was. But yeah, so I'm very appreciative of the sort of portfolio we have built. In regards to the portfolio, yeah, there's 5 homes built up over a 8-year period. We purchased our final home in 2019. I think it built at the end of 2020. And since then, we've been holding on to the properties. The first one, Vanessa purchased in Young, in New South Wales. And yeah, back then, 2012, it was 160 $1,000. And I know we say that, it wasn't much back then, but the income that Vanessa was earning was probably about $40,000 a year. The second property was in Orange in New South Wales. And that was my first, well, technically my second property. The first property I ever bought was in Cootamundra, and my son's mum currently lives in that with my son. But yeah, the one in Orange, I purchased it for $222,000, and that was 2014. Again, it's a low price. However, my salary back then was only $60,000 a year, so it's quite relative. And then Vanessa and I bought a property in Griffith in 2016, all regional New South Wales, namely because I travelled for work. I relocated with the business I was working for, still technically working for. And yeah, that was $300,000. And then when we moved to Canberra, the ACT, we built our first home. I always wanted to build a home. I think I mentioned in the last podcast, Vanessa wanted to buy a home. I wanted to build a home. I think in hindsight, I should have listened to Vanessa. But anyway, it worked out well. That home is now on the market to sell. I never did plan on selling property, but that works out financially, which we can talk about as well. And then after we built that, we built the fifth home about a year and a half later. That was more of a lifestyle build for my mum. My mum was going to come live down in Canberra near us, and we thought, well, why don't we build another home that we can have a granny flat in, and she can live with us, and yeah, just all get along, which ironically we have. So we've been in technically the same house for 5 years now, and it's been really great. My mum helps out with Bella. We help my mum out. And yeah, it's been really good. And I guess I do say it casually, but that's basically how we done it. It was hard. There was a lot of sacrifices. We did go quite a long periods of time without spending money. For example, when we built the two homes, we didn't spend money, and we did do it with, could say, a lot of risk. We didn't have a lot of spare money to build those homes, especially with the second one being so close to, well, during COVID. So yeah, there was a lot of sacrifices that we did take. We didn't go on holidays. Vanessa always jokes that she never wants to eat sausages every day for 6 months again. And yeah, it did take a lot of sacrifice and a lot of planning, and yeah, it wasn't easy. But in saying that, that's what we've done. I think the biggest thing we did do was we didn't sell. So I have spoken to a lot of people in my time who they've always sold their home for whichever reason, whether they were upgrading or usually upgrading. They're usually upgrading to a bigger house. And I remember with the Griffith house, Vanessa, we were contemplating selling that home when we were moving to Canberra, and it was just funny. We had this guy who would come and knock on our door. He'd done it about 4 times, asking for us to sell him the house off market. No real estate agent involved. And I remember him. He was trying to offer us $300,000. And we paid $300,000 for it last 6 months earlier. And Vanessa was tempted, and I said, no, like, we just keep it. And that's probably the biggest thing. We didn't sell. We kept all of them up until now, and that's put us in the position that we are currently.
Yeah, I think probably one of your biggest challenges would have been getting finance during, especially the builds, I would have thought. You've got to take finance loans, construction loans. So that would have been an interesting journey. But my understanding is that was just before the COVID period. And, I suppose, at that time, rates hadn't hiked up to what it is, I suppose, now. And so that probably was to your benefit. And not only that, construction costs had it gone to the extent it has now as well. So it would be a completely different ball game, I think, if you were building now compared to when you did it. But at the same time, like you said, you were probably on lower wages and everything. So there was definitely, I would assume, a lot of sacrifice that would have been needed. But I think, yeah, selling has its merit at certain times, but more often than not, when investors sell their home and not making the most of their whatever benefits you get from it, it's usually quite a big mistake, because property obviously has grown up so much over the last sort of 10 years than from when we've started investing. And yeah, unless you're putting it to good use and bearing in mind the amount of selling costs and holding costs and stamp duties and capital gains and everything like that, yeah, it certainly erodes some of the profits that you make anyway, unless you are selling for a really decent chunk of money. So that is a good lesson to have. I think you only sell when you really need to sell, and if you've got a plan after that as well, I think that's really important too. So you've got your 5 properties, and you mentioned you're selling it. So do you want to just give us a bit of a view of your mindset over the last sort of year or two? With you've been working for quite a long time, my understanding, but at the same job as well for a long time, going through the ranks. And yeah, and do you want to give us a bit of a understanding of your mindset through that process up until now?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I've been with the business for 25 years. It's been quite rewarding. I was quite successful. 25 years with the one company does take its toll. And over the last sort of year and a half, has progressively become harder to sustain, you could say, to the point where I was working 45, 50, 60 hours a week, 5 days a week, like everybody else. But it just had become unsustainable moving forward. And that's why I figured we're in the position now with the 5 properties, amongst other investments as well, that I no longer needed to be in that position. I miss family time. I miss going, holidays. I sacrifice just hours and hours for the business, and I did get quite rewarded for it. I did end up, quite a successful role, and I was remunerated. I was paid accordingly as well, but it just wasn't sustainable anymore. I didn't even know my daughter. I I didn't know anything about her. I thought I did, but it turns out that I didn't over the last 6 months, because I've basically it's probably been nearly 6 months since I haven't been working. I have got to know my daughter just inside and out. I know what she likes. I know exactly what she likes to eat. I know exactly what she likes to do. I know that she loves watching the YouTube all the time, and that's probably because I was never spending any time with her. Probably to the point now where every evening, myself and Bella, we watch Stranger Things on Netflix. Every evening we watch an episode. The last night's episode went for an hour 20. I was like, "Oh, it's just dragging on." But I hadn't done that previously. I just didn't have the energy. I didn't have the time, and she loves it. And go figure, she's not on YouTube anymore. She's actually hanging out with me.
I think it's quite powerful, because there's quite a parallel with my situation as well. And I finished work in 2022. I was on a really, really good income at that time, working construction, and I could have kept going as well. We started to have kids, and I think that was the priority for me. And I think the powerful thing is that people say, how did you do it? And you got to have a certain mindset for sure. You got to be able to take the courage and take the leap. And we had numerous discussions about it when you were thinking about doing it, because I'd gone through it before. And I said to you, mate, it is the most rewarding thing to be able to take control of your future and not keep running that rat race, which is just taking that time away from you and your family, and which is the most important thing. When you're close to the end, those things don't matter. The work situation doesn't matter. The roles don't matter, but those memories and those experiences do, and that's really what should take importance. And I think having those properties behind you, at least the financial backing behind you, and like it did for me, enabled that mind shift and that courage to take that leap. A lot of people, credit to them, they can do it without having such a large security or financial blanket, but having that blanket that, both of us did made the decision so much easier. And I could already tell you're not regretting it by the way you're speaking about how you're spending time with your daughter, no doubt, Vanessa, and, same with myself. So I think, yeah, it's really powerful that to be able to do these sort of things, in my opinion, for the majority of people, you've got to be able to have that security behind you to be able to say, look, if things fail, I can always go back to work, or I can sell some properties, or whatever it is, but without that, it's makes the decision and life so much harder to get to the position you want to be in the future. So yeah, so kudos to you to be able to get into that position. And I think likely your mindset around money and money management has enabled, and Vanessa's as well, of course, has enabled both of you that to be able to, let you do what you do. So that's fantastic. So now you've got to the stage, you're spending time with your daughter, and you're obviously taking some time off. What is your sort of next steps in your property journey, in your financial situation to get you to that final goal?
So probably, I guess, start with very, very appreciative of what we have been able to build to enable me to do this. Like I said earlier, I kick myself every day. And I know I'm very lucky. Vanessa's, where our whole family is very lucky, and we don't take the sort of situation we're in lightly.
Just for context for the viewers, and are you able to share roughly what that portfolio value is?
As it stands today, is easy 4 mil.
Yeah, it just gives the viewers a bit of a context and an understanding of what you need to be able to get into this position.
Like you said, to have that behind us is that was a no-brainer to say, okay, well, why am I still working? Like, how much more do I need? We're not materialistic sort of people. We don't spend a lot of money. And I figured, well, how much more would I need? Like, we get into a point in our lives where we're just getting more for the sake of it. And that's what triggered us to be able, and myself, to be able to sort of move away. The plan, so I'm actually selling one home. That by selling that one home, it's going to free up a significant amount of cash flow, and it's also going to provide basically the calculations. And I'm no expert, but I do run spreadsheets every 5 minutes of the day that Vanessa tells me to close and stop looking at. But basically, with freeing up one property without investing that money, without doing anything with it, it's going to provide approximately 8 years of not needing an income. Now, in saying that, that's what made me comfortably to be able to go, okay, well, I've got enough, is because that's without doing anything with the money. So I do have plan. I'm still in process of working out exactly what to do with the surplus money, whether we invest further into ETFs, whether we purchase a commercial property to get more income, or whether I just simply leave it in the offset or the redraw. And then, I did consider having it in the redraw, and that would eliminate quite a large amount of payments in the other debt we got. So there's a number of options that I'm looking at, and all the options work. It just depends on which avenue to take. I am leading towards doing something with the money that's going to produce an income. That way the money supports my lifestyle and the money still stays there, as opposed to just having it in the offset and drawing down, which would be an easy one. It would eliminate a lot of PPOR debt, but I'm in the process of working that part out. All I know is that I don't want to go back to the 9 to 5, and I'm confident at this point that with that portfolio behind us, we'll still have 4 homes. there is I do joke with Vanessa and say, well, we will move from that 1% club because only 1% of property investors have 5 or more properties. But it's not about that anymore. Like I said, it's not about more. It's about now doing what's important with our time and with our money, and that's being happy, really, being
Yeah,
happy, the
yeah,
stress.
absolutely. I think the goal is to actually reduce the number of properties over time. You don't want to be holding a whole stack of properties. You want to be getting an income, and to do that, you actually got to reduce the number of properties. You've got to reduce your net wealth to be able to focus more on income generating assets, which may not, may or may not grow as much, but you got to focus on the income stage, and that's what's important. And then the metric is not, like I said, the number of properties. It's the amount of income you're generating. And so that's the important thing, and that's the exit strategy. So I think for the viewers, it's good to hear from someone who's going through that process right now and that exit strategy. It's so important to get that right, after doing so much of the hard work. But you've got to be able to, execute. You've got to be able to have an understanding of what your future plans are. And, I think you'll figure things out as you go, because obviously there's different market cycles and everything like that. You've got to be able to sustain your debt levels when you're exiting your portfolio to an extent. So I'm sure we'll I'm very interested to hear about your sort of journey, whether you start to get into the commercials of the world, the SMSFs, the dividends, high yielding properties, all that kind of thing. And I think there's the strategy always changes as well, I think, as life goes on. I always thought I'd always get into commercials, and sort of lately I've thought about other opportunities and everything as the experience starts to grow and everything like that. So it's really exciting, and I think really looking forward to your next steps. And speaking of next steps, you've finished up your permanent job, and you were doing a little bit of work for us previously, the Wealth Engineers, and now do you want to tell us a little bit about the role that you're doing now?
Yeah, so I've come on board and I'm officially a property acquisition specialist with the Wealth Engineers, and I'm helping source properties. It's been great, and yeah, it's just been great finding really good homes, really good investment homes for people. And yeah, I hope to use a lot of my spare time to do that. Also, want to open a business as well. And, I have time to do all of this now, whereas previously there was just no time to do anything. But yeah, really excited to be part of the team and hopefully add value to other investors. And I think probably the biggest bit is I'm coming from somewhere where I've done it. I've got the portfolio. We've like this has been our lives for the last 15 odd years, looking at properties, and everywhere we go, we're just straight on to realestate.com and having a look at how much property was across the road. And even Vanessa, she loves it too, and even Bella, she talks about houses all the time. I've got to constantly remind her that she's in a very, very good position, because it's normal to her, which does worry me a little bit if it is so normal to her.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing at the moment with my time.
No, well, welcome aboard, mate. It's, very, very happy to have you on board officially, and helping out a number of our clients at the moment. And yeah, like you said, I think it's really important. You've got that experience, and our whole team does as well. You've got the number of properties. We're not shooting you off to some sort of junior guy who's never invested property in his life. And so I think the experience that you're going to bring to us, it's going to be fantastic. And no doubt you'll keep growing. And I think the biggest thing also is that you're coming into a profession which you're just passionate about day in, day out. And it's obviously showcased in your own personal journey as well. So yeah, I think it's all exciting times for you. And I'm so happy that you've been able to, quite get out of the rat race and be able to do something that you love. And no doubt it'll be an evolving journey for you. So we'll continue to update the viewers on your journey. And yeah, it's all great. Like I said, I think it's great to show this side of the equation rather than just the accumulation side too. So, mate, I really appreciate you coming on. I think before we started, we were thinking, what are we going to really talk about today? But no, I think that was really useful for our viewers, and no doubt we'll get a lot that they'll get a lot out of it. So thank you again.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me back on. Great.
No worries, no problem, and give my regards to the family, and we'll speak soon.
Will do. See ya.
Okay, thanks everyone. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Cheers. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the chat, feel free to drop us a rating on Spotify or wherever you listen. It helps us reach more listeners to help them with their journey. Catch you in the next episode.